Christmas is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year. We think of warm fires, family gatherings, and safety. But we often forget that winter also brings the longest nights and the deepest darkness. The falling snow is beautiful until you realize it muffles the sound of footsteps approaching your house. The icy wind is atmospheric until it drowns out the sound of a window shattering in the next room. Tonight, Omestom, I am going to share with you three terrifying, true stories from a cabin hidden deep in the woods, to a stalker on a lonely frozen highway, and a stranger watching from the storm. These people thought they were safe for the holidays. They were wrong. So, lock your doors, check your windows, and pull the covers up tight, because you never know who might be walking through the snow outside your house right now. Christmas of 2019 was the year me and my two best friends, Mark and Tyler, decided to break tradition. We were all in our early 20s, living states away from our families. And honestly, we were completely burnt out. The idea of dealing with airports and family drama was just too much. So we decided to rent a cabin. The cabin we found was about an hour outside of town. The listing said it was in a neighborhood, but when we got there, it was basically deep woods. Sure, there were other cabins, but they were spaced at least a mile apart. You couldn't even see the lights of the next house through the thick pine trees. We arrived on Christmas Eve. We brought tons of food, snacks, and beer. Mark even brought his Xbox. We drank and played video games until 2 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't exactly a Hallmark holiday, but it was definitely fun. By the time we all went to our rooms, I passed out almost immediately. The place was freezing, and the cabin creaked like every other old wooden building. But I was tired enough that none of it mattered. At least until I woke up. It was probably 3 or 4 in the morning. Still pitch black outside. I didn't know what time it was exactly, but I knew I'd been asleep for a while, and I knew that something woke me up. Footsteps, soft, slow footsteps, coming from the main living area, not walking normally. More like someone taking careful steps, trying not to wake anyone. I blinked a few times in the dark. I figured it had to be one of the guys, maybe getting water or using the bathroom. I laid there listening, waiting for the footsteps to go down the hall, but the sound just stayed in the same area, the creaking boards near the front of the cabin, almost pacing. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. The cabin settled back into silence. I rolled over and fell asleep again. When I finally got up in the morning, the sun was shining and the guys were already up. First thing I did was jokingly ask who was creeping around at 4 a.m. I expected some stupid answer, but both of them gave me the exact same confused look. Mark said, dude, we all went to bed at 2. Tyler shook his head, saying he didn't get up once. I laughed it off at first, but then I glanced over toward the front door. My stomach dropped. The lock was undone. Not just the deadbolt, the handle lock too, fully unlocked. The door was still shut, but the locks weren't turned. We were all fairly sure that we had locked the door, but we wanted to believe it was nothing, so we just let it go. That night, I laid in bed awake. There were no curtains or blinds, so the window next to my bed made me feel really uneasy. And then I heard it again, the soft, quiet footsteps. I sat up and listened as intently as I could. I knew this time that it wasn't one of my friends, because I would have heard them leave their rooms. I was absolutely sure that what I was hearing were footsteps. Suddenly, the footsteps moved. They went from the living room to the hallway. They got closer and closer, walking all the way down, passing by my door, and going toward Mark's room, and then it was quiet. I very quietly grabbed the door handle and pushed my door open just slightly enough to peek out. I saw a large man. I mean, like maybe 6'5" or taller. Long hair, thick beard. He was standing still, facing Mark's bedroom door, just standing there, motionless in the dark. I froze up, but just 20 seconds later, I heard a slight creak. The man turned. Before I could even react, he slammed my door open. The man stood in the doorway, staring at me with wide open eyes and an emotionless face. I yelled at the top of my lungs. Mark and Tyler came running out. Tyler tried to stop him, But this dude was huge. He slammed Tyler against the wall and threw him to the floor. Then, just as fast as it started, the guy ran off. He took off out of the cabin and disappeared into the forest. We quickly locked up the place and called the police. It took over 20 minutes for them to arrive. And the whole time we were holding kitchen knives, anticipating the man coming back. But he didn't. We got no answers. The police think he might have been looking for the owner, not knowing it was a rental. That would explain why he stared at us and hesitated. But again, it really is just a theory. Whatever the case, we're all just glad it didn't come down to an all-out fight. Because looking back at the size of that man, I genuinely don't know who would have won. This happened back in winter, right around Christmas time. I live with my girlfriend, Sarah, and since we live pretty far from our families, we almost always went on road trips around the holidays. This year, the drive was just under 11 hours. We packed our bags, threw them in the trunk, and left on Christmas Eve. We were hoping to make it there at night so we could have all of Christmas Day with her family. The first couple of hours were quiet. I think a lot of people had already done their driving for the holiday, so the roads weren't crowded, just endless miles of dark highway. Eventually, the gas light came on. I pulled off at a small, isolated gas station to top off the tank. There wasn't a single other car there, just one flickering streetlight. Sarah waited inside the car with the heat on, while I ran inside to pay. The wind was harsh, and the lot hadn't been plowed yet. So there was basically half a foot of snow I had to run through just to get to the door. I opened the door and walked in. And right away at Bow I noticed how quiet it was. Ding dong. The bell chimed, but I didn't see anyone. I looked around for a second. I figured maybe the clerk was in the back room. I grabbed a couple of drinks and walked up to the counter. But nobody came up. I called out, "Hello?" Silence. I peeked into the back room, but I didn't see anyone, or even hear anyone. The place was actually empty. Even though the doors were unlocked and the lights were on, it was strange, and I started to get a bad feeling. I put the drinks down, turned around, and walked back outside. As soon as I stepped out, my heart stopped. I saw a guy standing right at my girlfriend's window. He was bundled up in heavy winter clothing, hood up. He was tapping on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. He looked like he was trying to talk to her, knocking on the window and looking in. I started hurrying over. "Hey!" I shouted. As soon as he saw me, he backed up. He didn't run. He just started quickly walking away, disappearing into the darkness behind the station. I jumped into the car. Sarah was flustered. She was pale. She said he came out of nowhere as soon as I walked in. All he was saying was, "Roll down the window," over and over again. We didn't even bother getting gas. I turned on the car and drove out of there as fast as I could. That place just had an unnerving feeling to it, and neither of us wanted to be there a second longer. Unfortunately, the weather turned worse. A blizzard rolled in. We were still 4 hours away. We were tired, scared, and the roads were getting dangerous, so we decided to stop at a motel just off the highway to sleep for a few hours. It was 2 o'clock a.m. I pulled in. The motel was run down, but open. I got a room key from the night clerk, an older guy who looked half asleep. We went to our room, locked the door, and passed out within 30 minutes. I set an alarm for 7 a.m. I think both of us slept like rocks. I never woke up once. When my alarm went off, I went outside to load the car. It was incredibly cold. The wind was blowing snow dust everywhere. I ran back inside to check us out of the room. I walked into the small office where the clerk was, but just like the gas station, the clerk wasn't there. I stood still for a moment, feeling the déjà vu wash over me. I took a few steps closer to the desk. "Hello?" Nobody answered. However, I saw something behind the desk. A bunch of papers were scattered all over the floor. The chair was knocked over. It looked like the worker had left in a hurry, or like there had been a struggle. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I ran back out to the car. "Sarah, we have to go. Now!" She hurried out. I grabbed what was left and jumped in the driver's seat. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw a man standing on the side of the building. Even from that quick glimpse, I saw it was the same guy from the gas station. Same winter coat, same hood. He was just standing there, watching us leave, knowing something was definitely wrong. I got onto the highway and Sarah called 911. We met officers at a diner 15 minutes away. And this is where it got a lot more disturbing. One of the officers asked, "How did he follow you? You drove 100 miles in a blizzard." The officer walked around our car. He knelt down near the back tire, and sure enough, he found it. A GPS tracker, stuck right under the back wheel well. The guy must have stuck it there when he was standing by our car at the gas station. That's why he was tapping on the window, to distract Sarah while he placed it. But the horror didn't stop there. It took over an hour for police to go to the gas station and the motel. When they reported back, me and Sarah went pale. The gas station attendant confirmed missing. The motel clerk confirmed missing. This guy, he wasn't just following us. He was hunting. And if we hadn't left that motel room when we did, I think it's safe to assume we would be missing too. They never found him. Somewhere out there on the winter roads, he is still waiting. This was 2016. Because of my work and a bunch of scheduling conflicts, this was one of the few times I spent Christmas alone. I had a nice small house in a good neighborhood. And although being alone on the holiday wasn't great, I still enjoyed the quiet that year. Christmas Day started calm, but by evening, the storm hit. It went from snowy to a full whiteout in under 30 minutes. The wind started shaking the windows. And with all that noise outside, the house felt extra quiet. I made dinner and put on a movie. It was about an hour later, around 9 p.m., when I heard the first knock, 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 not loud or frantic, just a single knock pattern on the front door, sharp enough to cut through the wind. I froze on the couch. No one ever came to my door on Christmas, and absolutely no one should have been out in that weather. I muted the TV and waited. For a long moment, there was nothing but the storm. Then, another knock. 3 times I got up and walked toward the door, but I stayed low. I didn't want anyone outside to see me through the side window. I stood there, listening. Eventually, I figured I should probably just leave it. There was no way I was going to answer the door anyway. I went back to the couch, trying to brush it off. But it only took about 5 minutes for me to hear something else. I quickly paused the TV. It was very faint, but it sounded like something being dragged through the snow, slowly moving from the front door all the way around the side of the house. I followed the sound with my eyes until it went up to the back door and stopped. My back door was a sliding glass door. There were no curtains covering it. I was hesitant to even look. But then there were those 3 knocks again. Knock, 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 right on the glass. I almost couldn't believe it. I stood up and tried to slowly lean around the corner to peek. Instantly, I saw a pair of eyes piercing in at me. It was so dark, I could only barely see the man, but his face was pressed right against the glass. He was watching me. I stumbled back. Oh my God! I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I stayed in the living room, too scared to move. Something about the look in his eyes was horrifying. I was on the phone for maybe 2 minutes, when suddenly I heard a sharp scraping sound, and before I could even think, crash, a loud shattering smash against the back door. The sound of glass falling onto the floor echoed through the house. The wind instantly flooded the room, freezing cold air rushing in. He had broken the door. He was inside. I assumed the man was in the kitchen, but the wind was so loud I couldn't hear footsteps. I quickly dove behind the couch. It wasn't the best hiding spot, but I didn't know what else to do. The next 5 minutes were excruciating. I curled up in a ball, clutching a heavy vase, listening to the wind howl through the broken door. I knew he had to be walking around, looking for me. And then, finally, I heard sirens. Police lights flashed through the front window. I got up and sprinted to the door, letting the officers in. They searched the house with guns drawn, but the man was already gone. There were wet boot prints going through the kitchen and into the living room. But here is the scariest part. The footprints stopped right behind the couch where I was hiding. He knew where I was. He had stood over me while I was hiding and just watched. It seems like he fled the moment he saw the police lights. His tracks in the snow went toward the field in the backyard and were covered up by the blizzard within minutes. Before the police left, one of the officers said something I still think about sometimes. He told me that with storms like that, it wasn't uncommon for people to check for unlocked houses. But I mentioned the knocking and how he circled my home. The officer just shook his head. He said, "Intruders knock to test the waters by not answering the front door, but then showing yourself at the back door. You confirmed you were alone, and you confirmed you were scared." I never really realized how every small choice I made that night sort of led to what ended up happening. I just got insanely lucky that the man wasn't determined to kill me, because I can only imagine how things would have ended if he was. Those were three harrowing accounts of Christmas nights turned into nightmares. It's terrifying to think how fragile our safety really is. We rely on deadbolts and distance and weather to keep us safe. But as we learned tonight, predators don't care about the cold. And they certainly don't care about the holidays. The man in the woods, the tracker on the car, the eyes in the blizzard, they all share one thing in common. They were watching when the victims least expected it. So this holiday season, when you are gathered with your family or driving home late at night, take a second look at the shadows. If you hear a noise outside, don't just assume it's the wind. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more true horror, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow in the dark. And if you have a scary story of your own, send it to the email in the description below. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you in the next nightmare. Good night.